All right. I have my new backgrounds up. I don't think they were up the last podcast. I don't remember. Anyways, back from vacation and just trying to get my head around the slowness of summer. I don't know if anybody else has as slow of a period during the summer as software vendors do, but it is like our depressing time of year.
Yeah.
Everybody's on vacation. No one wants to start up any new projects. And so you just kind of ride it out. And all of a sudden, everybody comes back in a panic in quarter three, going, "Oh my gosh, I should have got this going in quarter one. Help!" And all of a sudden, everything gets crazy again.
Yeah, they're all looking at the end of the year, going, "Oh wow, yeah, school just started. I was supposed to have this done, before spring break."
Yeah,
and it's not. And they try to kick it all in high gear.
And now they're looking at fall break.
Yeah.
So this brings us to a topic we talked about a little bit in the community update this week, but the top down versus bottom up approach, right? So I was telling Skip like that. My goal here is to show people like you start off low level. You start off as a tier one, whatever, whether it's in the hospital or in a MSP, and you're used to thinking that way, and then you level up and you think of that a new level. So you've thought about PCs, and then you got upgraded to a PC lead. Now you're thinking about, okay, how do I do virtual PCs and things like that? And you work your way up from the bottom and you float up. But then that changes your mindset to think about that way. So when I design out a new network, I'm thinking, okay, what kind of PCs do they need? What kind of switches do they need? And I move my way up because I'm used to thinking that way. And so a top-down approach says, before you install any equipment, before you buy anything, go to the business owner, ask them what they're doing, talk about where we're going as a company, get that theme in there, a mission statement, something. Then open up Visio and see what this project's going to look like at the end of the day. Not today, but like maybe in a year or two. Yep. Where are you going? And then start designing out your equipment. And that's what we call a top-down approach. But the thing is, you're never trained that way. You're always trained to, hey, I need 16 PCs. I need a switch. And
and so many times we're just moving, everything down one product generation or two, right? Maybe that's how we think about it. When we look at, some component, switches, right? I wonder how much time I've spent over my career logged into a switch. Yeah, that'd be an interesting data set. So anyway, a switch, and we're just constantly involved in these, and we're like, all right, they're in this switch, and we need to upgrade them to these. We're moving from, 10 megabit shared to, 10 switched, and we just keep going up and up the chain. But is that what the business really needs? Again, a lot of time into switches and a lot of time looking at the data, trying to manage all this. And at every switch level, I mentioned 10 megabit shared, right? There was a real pressure point when we were back on those old 10 megabit hubs, essentially, right?
Hey, that hub to switch was a glorious day.
it was. And there was a real specific area there where, we were like, yes, we're switching over. And I remember we had one field office that was still on one of these old little inserts that went into our router, and it was a shared 10 meg connection. And as a technology person, you look at that and go, oh, that's awful. All right. We were well into switched, networks then. And we look at that and that's all of that 10 megabit share. That's awful. But when you drill down and you look at it and you realize that there's only 3 or 4 users there and they're hanging off this old lease line, the bandwidth needs weren't there. Yes, they were really slow, but there were other bottlenecks that prevented them from seeing any value in upgrading. Yeah. Right now, yes, there were plenty of values. We needed to do all kinds of things. I totally get that. But there was no value when I did ultimately go out there and swap in all this new equipment, right? And I charged their operating expenses for that. I mean, that they saw it show up on their budget sheet. And they're like, great, IT spent more of my money, right? they didn't see any value because it changed nothing in their environment. It changed nothing around their business. So, it was a great and necessary, upgrade to their technology, but there was no top level value to that. And so we have to flip those around. We have to look and go, hey, we're going to do this. I know a lot of times we inherit networks, just like I did, that one up in Baker, Montana. If anybody knows, where Baker, Montana is. Everybody else, it's a big mystery. But, when we inherit some of these, many times we look at it, we look at all the hardware and go, I need to upgrade this. I need to upgrade this. I need to upgrade this.
Check.
Yes, you probably do. But why? Well, what you need to flip that around so that your upgrades are going to impact the business. You need to know what it's going to do. And every once in a while, you may find something. You look at that and go, that thing is old as the hills, but it's fine. I don't need to change it. I can do something else that will benefit the business more.
Yeah. And that large impact is what we talk about all the time. So if you're on our community updates and you listen to our podcast, you hear us talk about that you're more impactful talking to the business owner or a key stakeholder and doing something small than doing something big. So I remember being in IT, right? And the new server chassis would come out, or the new class of server would come out, and you're like, oh my gosh, look at that backplane. On that new switch or that new firewall, and you're all excited about it, kind of like looking at a car, with a really good souped up engine. That's really awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't really think in terms of, does the business really need this? You just want it because it's cool and it's shiny, and oh man, look at that backplane. And in the meantime, your company is trying to think, okay, how do I make more money? And this backplane has nothing to do with it. It's just eating into their profit margins. So with a top-down approach, like, again, for those of you Visio lovers out there, like I used to work in Visio all the time. Like mapping out an architecture takes time. If you're really good, you can do it. You can do it quickly. But you still need to say, okay, here's where they are. Here's where they need to be. But how do you design where they need to? Do they need HA? Do they need full gig capacity? Do they need IPS, IDS? Do they need a variety of things based upon their sector? And so if you start building from the bottom up, eventually you're going to end up with a little bit of a rat's nest. Because yes, the PCs are running great and the switches are running great, but it's starting to get messier the higher you go because you didn't think it through all the way. You're building a standard network that you have in your head and you think applies to everyone. It's not necessarily true. And then let's get out of the network design and let's just get into software. Think about, how are you educating this customer? Do they need to have education workshops? Do they need help understanding how to sell remotely, how to run POSs? Can you design a network that supports that? And you don't know these things in the beginning. And that's why a lot of people will talk to me about how they design this network, and the stupid customer forgot to tell them about this thing. And now they've got to deal with it. It's messing up their designs. No, they didn't forget to tell you. You didn't ask the right questions to discover it. If you had asked about the lines of business, this would have come up in natural conversation.
Yeah. And this kind of keys off something that yesterday we were talking about this. It's who you're talking to. And, if you've gotten into that point where your conversations are centered around, tickets, that was our conversation of the day, tickets and SLA levels and all these sort of very metrics, you've probably been handed down the management chain to a much lower level. And you may be communicating earnestly with that person and asking them questions. What do you need here? What's the goal of doing this? And that person is giving you all the information they have, but it's only one little bit. It's their view through the soda straw of the organization. Yeah. And you need to be talking to someone who has the hilltop view, who's looking with the binoculars as to where they want to go. And yes, you met their expectations. You delivered everything they asked for. but they didn't know what to ask for.
And ironically, this is often the most technically inept person at the company, right?
Yes.
Because they focus on strategy, and they're the ones who are constantly messing up their inbox. They're the ones who are constantly having these dumb tickets come in. But their brain is full of the business strategy. They don't have time to think about technology. And you might even think to yourself, how is this person running a company? It's because they aren't thinking about the same things you are. It should be a key indicator, like, how are they running a company? How do you not understand?
Yep.
You need to question them more and say, hey, tell me a little bit about the company and how it's running. And you're going to get a very detailed explanation of how the company runs, and it might overwhelm you, just as if you try to explain network design to him or her. It's this idea that you have things in your head that you care about and you're passionate about, and it kind of pushes other things out. You're passionate about networking and technology. They're passionate about business and flowers or whatever, or schools, whatever industry they're in. That's what they spend their time living, eating, and breathing. That's why they're running that company. And you've got to translate that view of where they want to go into technology. And it's not easy. Sometimes it is. Oh, I've done this 30 times. I'll just do this again.
Yeah.
And that's why it's really easy for us to get into a rut of thinking one way, because that one way is easier. I need a router, or I need a pair of firewalls. I need these switches, I need these PCs, and I need this software stack on here, and everything will be fine. Well, you just lost the battle because you didn't think about, okay, they really don't need HA. It would be better for them to have 2 firewalls, one for each site, because they can't afford an HA cluster in both sides. And they don't need an HA cluster in both sides because they're not reliant on the internet. They would rather have a different direction. That's why you custom design these networks. Now, most of the time, people are going to need a standard network, but you should ask first. Ask, what are you trying to do?
Yes, and be prepared to have your views challenged. You need to be open. I think, we move, maybe I'm just internalizing this too much, but, we move through things and we get a pattern down. We see things that work, and that we establish our own standards, however we think of things, and we would run into things that are contrary to that. I don't know. Sometimes there's a hesitancy to just go, "Oh, that I can't believe that's happening," or kind of what made me think about that, Adam, was what you were saying. You can't believe that this person's actually running a company. How are they able to do this? They can't even log into their email. That there are some real challenging areas that you need to stop and listen to. And so I was talking to an MSP just a few days ago, and we were kind of I was going through my standard set of questions. What do you use? What application do you use for this? And, how are you handling this process? Because, we play an integral role in helping a lot of that out. And I got some very surprising answers from them. There was a huge lack of many of the established sort of processes and tools in this organization. So much so that I feel a lot of people, not just my first reaction, but a lot of people will go, "Oh my gosh, how are you getting anything done? I mean, you don't have any of these things in place." But, fortunately, my brain's catching up with, the advice that I've picked up over the years. I'm like, well, wait, hold on. Why? Because I just heard that this company has been in business for 30 years. They've showed consistent profitability. They've grown in the last, 15 or 20 years steadily. They're up to about 60 employees. They've had 2 well-established business units. They're developing a 3rd business unit. I'm like, wait, this is a successful company. They're making money. They're growing. They're doing more, but they're doing it differently than a lot of other people are. And they're doing it different than the way I would expect. But that's okay. And that's actually great. And so now I'm really engaged. Like, how are you doing that? And that curiosity is, leading me into a better engagement with them. They're talking more and more about their business. I'm talking less and less about what, we can do for them. And that is putting me in a position to be a valuable partner for them. So, this approach from the top down has to be taken. You have to take that with an open mindset. You can't come in there and go, all right, I'm going to ask the CEO, these 4 questions, and I've got my standard, answers to every one of them. No,
Yeah.
no, that doesn't. You can't show up with the answers to these questions. You have to show up with an open mind so that you can do this properly.
Yeah. And that coming in with the answers, like, I know what my client needs, right? That's a bottom up approach.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you are some kind of expert business person. And even then, they come in with a mindset of curiosity.
Yes.
And so when designing, when you're talking to anybody, you don't even have to talk to the CEO, right? You just need to talk to a key stakeholder, somebody who knows the business. And they might be the janitor. I've worked here for 40 years. I do the HVAC support and very good at what I do. And he also understands the business. But talk to that person before you design out a solution. Be curious about what's going on. You should do this with everybody. You should do this with people that you're going to help them out. You wouldn't just walk into somebody's house and start reorganizing it. No, you'd say, hey, where does this go? Like, hey, do you need help cleaning your house? Yeah, sure. When you're boxing up somebody while you're moving, you don't just start throwing things into boxes. You say, hey, what's the process for organizing these clothes, these equipment? Like, oh yeah. And they may not have thought about it. Oh crap, I should probably create a process. Or we're going to go room by room and put boxes this way. Okay, let's get boxes of these kinds, make sure they're labeled, and we put them into the moving van. You're not making the call. You're asking questions so that you can serve your friend, your customer, or whoever in the best way. You have a lot of knowledge. I've moved a lot of people. Like, I'm a big guy, so everybody calls up Adam.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah, a lot of people call on
and his muscles to come help move people. And so I've seen people just throw things into piles, and I'm like, oh gosh. And just shove it in. I'm like, no. Like, get some boxes out.
There.
I'll go and I'll run down to U-Haul and I'll grab appropriate boxes. I just need to know, like, how are you planning on unpacking? And so it's a matter of thinking from the top. What's the end result going to be? Start with the end in mind and design around. Even if it's a 5-minute conversation during onboarding of, hey, where's your company going over the next 5 years? Okay, let's prepare you for that. Oh, you're closing down this physical building and you want to work remote completely? Okay, that completely changes my network strategy. Mm-hmm. We're going to get you out to the cloud. We're going to let these firewalls and switches and servers rot because we're going to move them all out to Azure and we're going to get them all into the cloud anyways. And so that changes your architecture. And if you'd spent 8 hours designing out a new network for them, not knowing that in 3 years they're closing down this office when the lease is up, you're going to have a hard time with them. And you're also going to be able to show them a cost savings. Look, I know this firewall's out of warranty. I know these switches are on their last legs. Okay, we can get you new ones for this much, or I can limp them along for the next year and a half and you can save $20,000. And then they can decide if they want to accept the risk or not.
Yeah. And there's a real efficiency to this as well. So kind of thinking about the day-to-day operations, and you've got a bottom line to manage as well. And if you're taking this top-up approach, you're more than likely going to be wasting time because you're going to be running into situations where you're analyzing the network. Oh, this stuff is old, and you're talking to your point of contact there, which is the office manager. And you're saying, hey, we need to do this. We need to do this. You're pushing for all these, very technical, maybe very valid elements, but you're pushing on those and you don't get anywhere. And eventually you find out, eventually it finally makes its way down the management chain. Like, oh yes, they're closing that office. So yes, everything that I've been pushing for the last, 6 months really hasn't mattered.
Yeah.
And that is a really hard place to be sometimes. And if you get the top-down approach, you can get to where you need to be faster. So you're working on the things that are ultimately going to pan out. So that's I think a really important. We always talk about efficiency. It's not as big a topic now. I don't know. I guess AI kind of maybe pushed out efficiency in all the marketing stuff, but it's still really important.
Yeah.
You have to run an efficient team, and if you're wasting time pushing that don't matter to your clients, it's going to be a waste of not only their time but yours, and that costs you money.
Costs you time and money. And as Skip tells people, like when he onboards them, like doing proposals, for instance, versus quotes, a huge time saver. It's a lazy way, but it's more effective. Talking for 5 minutes to the person about their goals will save you hundreds of hours down the road and save you lots and lots of money, a lot of heartache around. That's why around, oh, I can't get them to buy this equipment. It's because you're not speaking their language. That's why in our software, we have that one line for business goal, not 10 lines, not a business case analysis, because we know no one's going to do a business case analysis. We have one line saying, write down the one goal for this company so you can start there with every single conversation. You do that and you will be able to sell, you will be able to align, and you will have a much better relationship over time. And that's top down. And again, to wrap it all back up here, you think bottom up. Most people think bottom up because that's how you were raised. You started at a tier 1 and you worked your way from the bottom up in the organization. So your brain works that way. It's a shift in your mentality when you think from a leadership standpoint, okay, now I need to organize these tools based upon our end goal and where the business is going so that I can have everything in place for them. All right. Yeah. Top-down approach is a common topic for us. We're going to get a lot of guest speakers here over the next few months here. So be looking forward to hearing less from Skip and I and more from really cool people.
I'm looking forward to it.
All right. Thank you and have a great summer.
See ya.